Welcome, everyone. I am Rebecca Cooney, and I am your trainer today for Let Your Voice Be Heard, Effective Online Communication. I am an educator, so my background is in strategic communication. I teach courses in digital communication, public relations, integrated communication, and user experience design. I am also the director of Murrow Online Programs, which is basically we just offer two master's degrees that are online, two graduate certificates online, and one undergraduate certificate or undergraduate degree program, excuse me. I'm also a research associate on the Center of Excellence for Natural Product Drug Interaction Research. I've been on that grant for 5 years, and we are up for renewal, so we're waiting for the final thumbs up there. And on that particular project, I do web communication primarily and analytics, as well as general strategic communication. But today I'm here to speak with you about effective online communication. And we have lots of fun topics to go over, and also showing you the benefits of Zoom and how to stay engaged, be engaged, create engagement in the virtual space. So I'm going to hand it over to Amanda for a second. So she's going to handle a couple of housekeeping items. Both Amanda and Isabel will be helping out today with the chat and keeping things on track with our timing and other facilitation services, so I can kind of keep going with the program and we can keep things running smoothly. So Amanda, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We're so thrilled that you're able to join us. I know your expertise is certainly in demand these days, so we really appreciate you being with us. My name is Amanda Latreille. I'm the Program Support Coordinator for WISE, Women in Science and Engineering. I do want to introduce Isabel Munoz as well. She's our Graduate Program Assistant, and so the two of us together will be moderators supporting Rebecca's work today. So welcome. I do also want to recognize the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. They are a co-collaborator with us on this program, helping to make it happen today. So thank you so much, CTLE. That's all I had, Rebecca, I think, for now. So I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Okay, wonderful. So let's go ahead. We're going to talk a lot today about collaboration in the virtual space. So my background is in communication. I've been in the field for more than 25 years now, I think, which seems crazy. And I have a background in corporate as well as higher education and nonprofit. Most of my career has been in higher education. Serving in administrative roles. I've been teaching full-time for 8 years, and I've been teaching online for 6 years. So I have quite, I have a decent background in the creation, delivery, and the management of online courses and online programs. And I also participate in a lot of webinars, panels, and other digital presentations that put me in kind of a unique position to know some of the ins and outs of this world. I also teach both asynchronous and synchronous when it comes to the virtual space. So I've had to get very creative and very knowledgeable in learning how to manage these digital environments and engaging students, as well as engaging peers. It's all part of the package. So that's what we're going to talk about today. In a couple of different areas. So this is our agenda that I believe was sent out earlier. We're going to start with some introductions. I want to also show you some tools and some features that are in Zoom that will just help you understand what's possible in this virtual space and help you maybe think of things that you didn't think of before and give you some ideas on how to be effective in Zoom meetings and in virtual meetings in general. We're going to talk about personal presentation awareness. We're going to do some breakout rooms and some use of the chat so you get a feel. I want this to be considered a safe space where you can feel like you can speak freely, ask questions. We do have the chat, so please use that. We'll have you use the chat if I'm in the middle of something, but we'll also prompt you if we're going to open it up for if you want to share through audio. Either way, will be fine with us. We're going to talk about online meetings. As I said, we'll do a breakout session so you can experience going into a breakout room in Zoom as a participant and sort of feeling what that's like. We'll have a break at 3:20 if you're keeping track. And we will also talk about virtual panels and poster presentations, which many of you, if you haven't faced it yet, will face it soon. And then of course, all throughout we'll be doing discussion. So let's pop over and we're going to introduce you to a tool called Padlet. So Padlet was introduced to me when I was in a training program through Washington State University. It was called LIFT, which is, oh, it's an acronym. I'm going to forget what it doesn't matter. But it's basically about mindfulness and creating connections in the classroom, especially, but also just whether in your virtual or in-person space. So I believe in the chat, we've got the link to the Padlet. So let's go ahead and go out to it, everyone. So this is a tool that is free. I believe you can purchase a subscription if you want to have the advanced features. The free will give you a limited number of pads that you can create, little spaces that you can create. But this is a wonderful way to engage with people in a virtual space to get them to share information about themselves or about a project they're working on. You can run polls. You can have photos or just text. So is everybody with us here? I'm looking to Amanda and Isabel to help troubleshoot. Mm-hmm. But you just click on this little button here in the lower right corner and type whatever you feel like typing, but this is just a hello and self-introductions and just, there you go. See how it's really fun. I've seen this used in the classroom. People can be anonymous or they can identify themselves. I think the way that you are not anonymous is perhaps those that maybe have an account and are logged in. So Moira, I wonder if you're logged in. Otherwise, I think you do come in anonymous, but it's really fun just to play with this tool and get a feel for what it's like to see everybody coming through and photos. So one of the exercises that I have done in the past is as sort of an icebreaker when I'm with a group is you have people pair off, they get to know each other, and they actually created social media posts using a tool called Canva. And then they posted those creations to a Padlet. And that was a really fun way to just get self-introductions. This is fun. So I love to see, you got some photos here. This is my husband, Chris. He is also an educator. We are coming to you from Pullman, Washington, on the other side of the world from where you are. This is wonderful. Very fun tool, free. It's just Padlet.com. There are a number of ways to display the information on a Padlet. They have a couple of different models. This one is just basically a bulletin board. And that's great. Really fun. Thank you for contributing. That's really fun just to see everybody on there. Okay. See, great creativity. I love creativity. Throwing up photos, throwing up. Some people even put in videos. It's just a really fun tool that I like to use. There you go, that little selfie at the beginning of the day that I love to see. Maybe just take one more minute. Maybe type in where are you actually physically located today? Are you at your home office? Are you at the are you on campus? Where is everybody today? Maybe just pop that in. I'm at home, okay. A lot of home. In the lab, good. That's great. I think it's important, especially as you're entering into yet another era, or at least a season of virtual meetings that we recognize that everyone's kind of coming from different places. Some of them might be in the office, as that has been, opened up much more than it was in the spring. Some of you are coming from home. And as we all know, if you're coming from home, right, you get Zoom bombed by the cat. You might have a kiddo walk in. You might have a husband or a wife walking behind you suddenly. The interruptions. I have 2 birds, FYI. Hopefully they're going to stay quiet today. I have 2 cockatiels, and they can be very chatty. So if you hear any chirping in the background, that might be them. We're trying to keep them quiet today. Wonderful. At home, this is terrific. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I just wanted to give you a little bit of one of the many tools that are out there that are fun to play with. And definitely, oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. We had a question in the chat. Assuming you can set it up for a class?
Yes. Yes. You can set it up for a class. You can share it as a link. You can share it as an embed code. So you could actually like pop it into your Canvas space. I'm not sure what Syracuse uses for the LMS. Isabel, do you know?
We use Blackboard.
Use Blackboard.
Yeah.
Blackboard allows for HTML embed as well. And I use Blackboard and Canvas, so I'm familiar with both platforms. Embed, you can also do QR code, which is really fun. It's a little bit, not as in practice as it was a couple of years back, but you can use, they actually have a QR code for it as well. So students, when they come in to a classroom setting, whether it's virtual or in person, the QR code's nice for that, because if you have it up on the screen, they can actually use their app and take a picture of it and they write into the Padlet space. So it's very cool. Very efficient. And it's a great way too, if you're trying to get, I've used it with guest speakers, and when, because sometimes students are just not very chatty. They suddenly become very silent when they're around a guest speaker. And by having a Padlet, they can type in their questions to the speaker. And that has been a way to really break down some sort of nerves and barriers that come up. So Isabel, I'm going to move on, but you just go, are there any other questions?
Not for now.
We're good to go. Okay, I'm going to pop. All right. Okay. Here we go. So the first topic of the day is personal presentation awareness. So there's 3 key areas that we're going to cover in personal space, equipment, and being present and mindful. And I don't know if Amanda mentioned this in materials, you will receive a copy of the slides. So I know that when I'm attending seminars and training sessions like this, it's really nice to get the slides after the fact, so you can take notes as you want to, but also you will receive these after the fact. So you have, just as a point of order. So I'm going to get into each of these: personal space, equipment, being present and mindful. Let's go ahead and get to personal space. So as most of you have experienced this now, we've all been in this together since March. We had to come home from our offices. We had to create a physical space where we physically located. You guys shared in your Padlet. Some of you are at home, some of you at the office. I have not been back to my office on campus that is 2 minutes up the road since March. If I go to campus, I have to go through quite a rigmarole. There's a whole setup of things. I have to fill out questionnaires. I have to get my temperature taken. I really need, if I have to go to campus, I better really want to be there, because it's gonna be a to-do. So a lot of us are gonna end up staying in our homes. And when I first came home, it was very challenging, because we had all 4 children returned. So 2 of the children who are in high school were already here, and then our 2 college age kids came home, back into the home. Rooms had to be reconfigured. We had to create studio space. Both my husband and I teach, so we had to figure out how we were going to be together in this house, with both of us being live and synchronous for most of our classes. So it was a to-do. We ended up in the dining room for part of it, and figured out a little bit of spacing. And Then we created Studio B, which was our bedroom. And we even had Studio C, which was the upstairs guest room. So physical location and finding a space that you're comfortable, finding a space that you feel, I don't know, that just has good lighting, that has a soft feel to it. They do recommend, they being the experts in this area, recommend a carpeted room if possible because it reduces the echo. Checking the lighting in your space. I don't know how many you've seen out there that are a little blown out perhaps, or very dark, and checking the lighting. Even just throwing a little desk lamp behind you can make a big difference. Anything that just puts the warmth that you want to have on you as best as possible. Having a flat surface, I'm sure you saw with many of your colleagues early on in this process, I had some that were balancing their laptops on couch pillows and really wobbly setups. I don't know if anyone experienced it as I did, but I felt like I was in traction after about the first week because I didn't have a good chair. I didn't have good posture. I was sitting at a dining room chair that so my arms weren't positioned properly from an ergonomic standpoint. So it took me a while to get all of these little things set up. And it's not really about spending a lot of money as much as it's just looking around your space and saying what's available. Excuse me. We're also going to talk about what's going to be in your background, the use of virtual backgrounds, and or like my setup back here where I have a few things in the background. They actually recommend a neutral background, maybe a desk lamp or a little bookshelf. But if you read a lot of the articles on it, they actually recommend as neutral a background as possible. Mine's a little bit busy if I was to be evaluated, but that is the overall recommendation. And then just comfort. Are you comfortable? Are you, if you're feeling like you're hot, you're cold, your posture's weird, your chair's not comfortable, that is definitely going to affect your stability and your sustainability throughout meetings. It's also going to affect your mood, and it's going to affect just your general disposition. So personal space is very critical. And I'm going to get into the Zoom settings in a second, and we'll talk a little bit about the virtual backgrounds and some other things. So equipment, computer versus mobile device best practices. It is highly recommended that as much as possible, you are not on a phone or a tablet. You will tend to be moving a lot. The framing is a little bit funky, especially on the phone. It is recommended, if possible, to be on a desktop or a laptop with a webcam, internal or external. That is just what's recommended. Internal or external. Personally, I will show you, and then I think it's the next frame. I use an external webcam. The internal webcam is sufficient. There's no problem with that. Internal versus external audio device. Also, personally, my laptop, my webcam, it's a little bit of a mix. So I'm using a simple Bluetooth, or that's actually plugged in, it's not Bluetooth, just a simple ear plugs, excuse me, device. But my sound is actually coming, you're hearing me through the webcam, but I'm hearing you through the computer. And that was through a series of testing. It just turned out that my sound on my computer was quite echoey and just not as high quality. So I chose to go through the webcam. So that's just through testing that you figure that out. And then Zoom settings and virtual backgrounds. So let's pop over to that. And Isabel or Amanda, please interrupt me if there are questions, and I will stop as we get into it. So settings. I'm going to pop over to the settings in just a second, but let's look at a few things. So if you are interested in investing, or if your department is willing to invest on your behalf, a webcam, they're only about $40. They're really inexpensive. They do a nice job. They are, from my experience, better quality than the internal camera from most laptops and desktops, if the desktop even has one. So the Logitech is a good brand. The headset, I personally I don't like having the headset over the ears. It just starts to hurt after a while, just an honest assessment there. So I do choose to have the earbuds instead. And again, you're talking about $15, $12. It's not a huge investment at all. So let's pop over here really quick. Let's go to our Zoom settings and take a look. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the settings. I just want to show you a few things. And in the general, there's just a few things that you can do. I like to set up the reminder that 5 minutes before a meeting's coming. In the video, wow, enabling HD is recommended. Touching up my appearance. Mirroring my video, the only thing that can be problematic there is if you mirror it, I believe Seattle went backwards on me. So it's best to have that off. Let's see, audio. This is where you can test your speaker and your mic. And I recommend doing both of that, and you can choose your, whatever you've got set up. And then let's look at virtual backgrounds. I think just for fun. Is anyone in their settings? You want to play with your virtual backgrounds? There's pros and cons to virtual backgrounds. They can be really fun. So I'm going to be in San Francisco for a little bit here. And the beauty of the virtual background is that if you're in a setting that you just simply cannot set up your space to, you're just not happy about your personal space, the virtual background can be very fun. It also, some use it as a means for personality and showing off their personality. So that can be really good. The only thing I don't like about it is that I tend to feel a little bit cut out. And so if I don't have a good contrast with my background, that's actually my clematis that's in my backyard. So sometimes I brought in personal photos. I took that photo in Washington, DC a couple years ago. And then our department actually early on in the virtual started to do some branding. So they actually provided branded backgrounds as well, some neutral. And there's Edward Armero hanging out with me. So very, very personal choice, very much a personal choice on whether or not you want to have them. But they can be fun, they can show personality, and they can be a great way to have as sort of an alternate for if you're not happy with your space. I see it a lot with students, and understandably so, because they're just in spaces that the virtual background works better for them.
Rebecca? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry there. You were going to ask about questions, and I do have one from one of our participants. She asked, in terms of computer versus cell phone, sometimes the Wi-Fi is not stable. If we use the cell phone, we don't need to worry about Wi-Fi getting interrupted. How can we balance this?
So I was even on a call yesterday, and it was actually a FaceTime call, and I realized really quickly, from a stability standpoint, I think that probably should come first, especially if you're a participant and you need to be present. But if you're going to be a key speaker, you just want to be mindful of how it's actually physically set, vertical versus horizontal. And what I found in the call that I was on yesterday is I didn't have a good place to sort of set my phone, and so it was problematic. Ultimately, we ended up kind of propping it. So I propped it on something, and it worked, and it was stable. But the way that I was looking was sort of awkward and a little bit up. So I think what it would come down to is stability is certainly the priority, I would say. And so if you feel that the Wi-Fi is just more stable on the phone versus the laptop or desktop, probably first priority. And then if you are going to be a key speaker on that call, do your best to set the phone or the device in a stable place where it's not going to be moving around, and you're framed as best you can. Does that answer it?
Right. Yep. I think that's helpful. Thank you. We have a couple more comments. One person shared, unfortunately, my computer cannot handle a virtual handout or virtual background without a green screen. And I actually can relate to that. I know we spoke about that when we did our practice session, Rebecca.
Yes.
Mine won't as well. So I think some of us are dealing with that. And
So then the best suggestion there is do your best to find a space to be on camera that has a neutral background, that has something that's the least amount of distraction, and the best, that framing and light that you can get. Everyone's pretty respectful. I would say overall, everyone understands that we're all doing the best we can. And as long as you're comfortable and you're confident, I feel like that's more important than anything else. And then if you have a background that is less than desirable, I think your confidence and your ability to fully be present and to feel good about just, where you are, where your space is good enough.
Great, thank you. Couple more things coming through,
Sure.
which is great. We appreciate the comments and the discussion, everyone.
Yeah.
Somebody says you can get a green screen for $16, so that's good.
Good to know.
Any recommendations to improve lighting? Any specific suggestions on that?
LED.
Okay.
LED, for sure. I find overhead lighting to be a little bit better. If you're in a room, like I have an overhead light, I don't have it on right now. But the other thing, just a desk lamp with warm lighting, warmer versus the bright fluorescent as best you can. I found in my kitchen was very tough because I had a lot of natural light coming in that I couldn't control. Even with the blinds, it was very, very bright. And so mostly what I tried to do was turn off lights in that case because it actually added. And there are some inexpensive spotlights that can also be purchased that are designed for virtual meetings that can be helpful. I'd have to look those up. I didn't share them on this, but my husband, he does a lot of research on that stuff. So I would be happy to share on some simple lighting kits that are inexpensive that help a lot, make a big difference.
Great. We just had a comment. Remember to light your face. Backlighting can make your face dark on screen. So that's another great tip. Thank you.
Good tip.
And somebody mentioned a ring light. So I don't know. I don't even know what that is. So
okay. So the ring lights are often used by what you're seeing them now is by the at-home celebrities. So whether they're YouTubers or the reporters, even the Saturday Night Live. When they were still filming in the spring, and the ring lights they actually do a really beautiful job with lighting. The only downside is that they give your eye, they put a ring around your pupil, visible ring, which for some could be distracting. So that's the only. So we have chosen not in my home and in my setup. We have chosen to not do that because of that ring that it literally puts around your eye, around your pupil.
Great.
Yeah.
I think we're good on questions and comments for the moment. We're
going to keep going.
Yep, I think we'll keep going. And
okay.
if you have additional questions, we will do our best to answer at the end as well, guys. So feel free to keep sharing.
So we're going to do a chat. We're supposed to be doing a chat right now, but I'm going to go ahead and pop through being mindful and present, which is the last portion of this section. And then we're going to do a little chat anyway. We're going to play with that. Although you guys are clearly apt in chat, so we don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time there. So what it means to be present. And when I say being present, I mean you are here. You are at this meeting, you are paying attention, you are not trying to do 6 other things. And that's hard sometimes. That is really challenging to arrive, especially if you have young children or pets or just chaos around you. It can be very hard to be present, but if at all possible, being present, being mindful, understanding that Zoom meetings in particular require a certain level of attention for yourself and for those that you're with. Dressing for the occasion, the main message there is mostly stripes make people seasick. And I think people don't know that. And so if you can avoid wearing stripes, avoid colors that help you overly blend with your background, and just colors that are sort of pleasing to the eye and not a lot of patterns is what's recommended. And dressing for the occasion, some say to avoid sleeveless, as it just sort of accentuates all the wrong things. It's better to have to wear sleeves or 3/4 sleeves. So these are just recommendations that I'm sharing with the group, and you guys are going to have a chance to share as well. Eye contact matters in the virtual space. So the rule is that we are all supposed to be talking to the camera, not talking to the screen. You can see the difference. Very challenging. I also have a monitor over here. So I have to be very mindful of looking at the camera, which I think is really awkward. So if I dip sometimes, it's because for me, it's still not quite organic. So I still feel a little bit, I don't know, awkward doing it. Here I'm going to talk about distracting manners and gestures. And my biggest problem is that I'm a gesture person. I talk with my hands. And so I have to be very, very aware that I do that and that I'm not overusing my gestures and my enthusiasm. I also don't think we need to be, stick people. I think that it's important that we show our personality. And if you are one that speaks with your hands, that's okay. You could keep doing that. But just be maybe mindful of it, and if it becomes distracting. I also tend to shimmy in my chair. That was pointed out to me once by a student. She said, "You're making me seasick." So I'm now more mindful of my chair shimmy. Just all these little things that you learn about yourself and learn from others. It's important to make note. Turning off notifications to limit distractions. So right before we met, Amanda and Isabel and I all did a moment where we turned off our phones, we turned off our computer notifications as best we could. We turned off all of our apps as I'm sharing a screen. So I'm trying to limit anyone, any notification coming through, alarms setting off, all that sort of thing. If the more you can limit those distractions, especially if you're going to be off mute, is important. We talked about looking at the camera, not the screen, and multitasking, not doing that, speaking with confidence. The other thing is, just being ready for your meeting and having things, right at the ready, right at the reach, versus having to get up and going and get something, leaving your space. It's so funny when people have to leave the meeting and they don't turn their camera off and they just leave this empty chair. So things like that, if you have to get up, it's good to turn off your screen or turn off your video, excuse me, and then leave and then return. Speaking with confidence is important, and that is a lot about speaking slowly, speaking with intention, and coming prepared to your session as best as possible. We're going to talk more about some of these things in just a little bit. So our next move here is to play a little bit with chat. We've got 23 going in the chat already. That's so fun. I know some of those are older. I can't move it over. Sorry, I'm going to be looking over here. So a group share on the chat. Ideas to limit challenges in personal presentation awareness in the digital space. So let's take a couple of minutes and share some ideas. What do we have here? I'm going to open my chat for, I don't know if you guys can see my chat. I don't think so. All right. So Isabel, feel free, or Amanda, to help me make sure I don't miss anything. If we have some ideas and some questions.
Yeah, we have a question that's not related to this, but we can get back to
Okay.
in terms of suggested syllabus language for encouraging students to present virtually. So.
Yes, we're actually going to talk about that.
Great.
I love the online conduct agreement. Oh, the other, Isabel or Amanda, can you take some notes for what I'm promising to share, please? So I don't distract by writing down things. So I've already said that I will provide some ideas for lighting kits that are simple. The other thing I'd love to share are, as we teach online courses, we have a wonderful set of language for online etiquette and online collaboration. And I'd be happy to share that language with you, things that you can pull from, because it's important, especially because what we really want to prevent. I have a very strict policy about cyberbullying. And if anyone cyberbullies anyone else, whether it is in a public space or in a private tech space, they will be disciplined, if not removed from the class. That is a student conduct issue. So, and that's becoming more and more critical as we continue on with our virtual spaces. Okay, so we've got, I'm seeing a few things. Can you, Isabel, tell me, can you see that I have the chat up? Or
No.
do you just see my, okay.
Yep.
I never can tell. That's all one of the challenges with these Zoom meetings is you're not always sure what everyone sees. Wearing color around your face and wearing lipstick. Yes, lips do tend to fade away. I've noticed that, especially, and I have since I'm a lighter, I'm a fair person. If I don't wear mascara, my eyes also disappear. So it's good for me to, a little bit of makeup, even if you're not accustomed to wearing makeup. I've even had my husband put on a little powder to reduce shine when he's going to record lectures, and I've sort of taught him how to do it so he can reduce that shine. It just looks better. It looks more professional. I like that. You put a Post-it note next to your camera that says, "Look here." That's a wonderful idea, right next to the camera. That's a great idea. Very top of your screen, the Zoom video, yes, at the top of your screen, it will lift your face, it'll lift your eyes automatically when you do that. And when you're doing an online presentation, is it fine to look at the slides and not the camera? I think it is. What I mostly see with even the most seasoned professionals who've been doing this much longer than I have, I see a mix where there's a little bit of down, a little bit of up, almost like when you're doing an actual presentation, if you were to be looking down at your notes, but you'd occasionally look up and speak to your audience. It's pretty similar. I think it has an organic feel. If you're constantly at the camera, it gets a little upward, right? So you want to make sure you have a little bit of a natural eye break, looking down, looking up. I think that's very appropriate. Take care to have a friendly resting face. Yes, a friendly resting face, excuse me. When we have a relaxed look, because I know I'm a bit of a facial, like I make a lot of face, like, inquisitive looks or, rolling the eyes, all of those things that I have to be much more mindful of when I'm on meetings now that it's just, we're all out there, we're all at the forefront. So challenge to minimize reflection on glasses. It is. I don't know if I'm having a lot of glare. I need to wear my glasses, so I'm willing to accept that there might be some reflection. I don't know. Let's talk about that more. Can we put that on the list, Isabel?
Yeah.
I'm not speaking enough from knowledge. I'd like to look that up a little bit and I will respond to that.
Great.
Other things, did I miss any? You tell me if I missed something. Okay.
I think you got them.
You're good? Okay.
I think you're good.
So I'm going to keep going.
Mhm.
Here we go. And we're at 2:40. How are we on time? Oh, we're very good. We're doing well on our time. Excellent. Another thing that I'm incredibly mindful of is to be respectful of other people's time, to be respectful of showing up prepared, and to be mindful that we all have other things going on and everyone's here for a reason, and we should stick to the program. So very, very mindful of that. So online meetings, I broke out this into 3 primary categories: self-care, and I'll talk about that, care of others, so being a support person to others that are in your online virtual meeting and community, and then some other online meeting etiquette items. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Self-care, arriving prepared. I don't know if you have ever experienced arriving unprepared to a regular meeting, but arriving unprepared to a virtual meeting, to me, is even more terrifying, because you are at least in an in-person meeting, you can maybe juggle around a little bit, you can talk around things. In a virtual meeting, everyone's eyes are on you, everyone's ears are on you. So I really like to come prepared to meetings, and I am not afraid to ask what my role in a meeting is, if I need to prepare anything prior to the meeting. I rarely would like to show up to meetings unprepared. I always send out agendas if I'm in charge of a meeting, and doing your best to show up prepared and ready to go. Pre-readings, that's one of the reasons we sent out pre-readings. It helps people build confidence. It helps people feel like they're going to be able to be active contributors. It gives them more incentive to show up. So arriving prepared and helping people become prepared is really, really valuable. testing technology before each meeting. The technology will fail, it just does. It also needs to be tested every time. There are a lot of settings, especially in Zoom, your Logitech, your computer itself, your device, that will return to defaults. And so never just assume that your audio is going to be working. Never assume that your video looks good. Zoom does have an ability when you go in, and I can pop out for just a second to show you, when you can just open Zoom. If you don't already have the desktop version of Zoom on your system, I highly recommend that you download that versus just relying on popping on through the link, because it gives you this empowerment where you can go in, you can pull up that setting, and you can check your video. How's everything looking? How's my light? Do I have anything funny going on in my background? How's my sound? Very much a bonus to be able to check those things before your meeting starts. I'm going to pop back under here. Use of verbal and nonverbal signs. We had a wonderful chat about this yesterday in our pre-meeting. Verbal and nonverbal, a great way to draw attention to yourself, and so we can practice here a little bit, is if you have a question, you simply raise your hand. You can use the chat features or the Zoom features where there is a raise your hand feature, but if you don't have somebody who's moderating your chat like Amanda and Isabel are, it could be missed, and then they've moved on to another topic, and you've missed your window. Raising your hand is a wonderful way, or a finger up. Just like, to me, this says point of order. Raising a hand means I have a question or I have a comment, and it works really, really well. And to use that as much as possible, just to get the attention of the person who's speaking.
Going off of nonverbals, we do have a couple of questions in the
Yes.
chat. Somebody asked about blinking too much. Is there any ideas to limit that? And then what about like taking sips of water? Is that distracting, or?
I think I'm a blinker, if you haven't noticed. I try to not do it. What I've read and what I've heard is best to avoid the blinking. And whoever's made that suggestion earlier of the sign that said, look here, apparently having things like that, I should probably have one myself. That is a way to reduce the blinking, is to have that sign, have something to point your eyes to. And it's also practice, which I haven't done enough of, I know. I don't know why I blink. It's very involuntary. But if you add that to the list, Isabel, I found a wonderful article on it. It's from, I believe, a reporter, broadcast reporter, who had to learn how to retrain her eyes from blinking so much. I will share that. It was very helpful for me to read it. I just haven't done enough of the practice to try to overcome it myself. And drinking water, I think, I hate to have to drink water in the middle of something, but if you're about to cough, or you're starting to get a little, choking your throat, I think you just need to, if it's organic, you take a sip of water. If in the perfect world, you take a sip of water when there's a natural break in conversation, when you have a second when you aren't speaking, and you can grab that water. Other questions, in fact?
There was one other question, Rebecca, that I'm seeing. Somebody commented that during office hours, she likes to use the whiteboard function. How do we remain centered with our eye contact if we're using that?
I think you probably are going to break your eye contact a bit,
Okay.
And it's okay. Again, I think a lot of it's about being organic. And what's more awkward to me is seeing the ones that are looking down, or they're looking up. Or they're just constantly moving around, or they're over here when everybody else is over here. It's really trying to be as organic in your movements as possible. You're trying to create a space where you're just speaking to people. You're trying to be natural. You're trying, to engage. And sometimes that engagement means you have to break eye contact, and it's okay. Limiting Zoom and meeting fatigue. So my greatest suggestion so far has been, if you don't have to meet through Zoom, don't meet through Zoom. If there is nothing to show, or there's not a group that needs to meet, if you can handle a conversation with someone over the phone, you should. Limit the Zoom fatigue. If you're just meeting one-on-one with people, or sometimes just a small group that's just talking about something that no screens are needed, no share screens are needed, no PowerPoints are needed. I really recommend you break free from Zoom when you can, and not that every single meeting has to be in Zoom. I primarily run Zoom meetings when I'm in with a group, like a committee I'm on, for example, or if I'm working with a faculty member that I need to walk through a tutorial on getting their course set up in Blackboard or Canvas. But otherwise, I really try to just say, why don't we just do a quick chat? Also, the use of texting, SMS if you have a Mac, which is very nice. That's also become more acceptable. I've been texting with my department chair and my dean for some time now. That seems like a new barrier to break down. Seems like that's, somehow that was sort of taboo for a while, but that has been opened up a little bit among our colleagues, that if you have a quick question for someone, you can use text. We also use Teams. There's also Slack, Discord, there's other tools that are out there. There's a lot of other ways for us to communicate that doesn't have to always be Zoom. And if we try to use a mix of those mediums, I think we will succeed in reducing this fatigue that we're all experiencing. And if there's other comments about that, please share that in the chat. I'd love to hear other feedback.
Rebecca, I just have a quick question. You just mentioned Discord, and
Mm-hmm.
I just came across that the other day. Brand new idea to me, and I know another office on campus is starting to use it. Do you have any more to say about that? And maybe you can tell people what that
Discord.
is.
Okay. You want me to show it to you?
Sure.
To pop it over. I actually have it. I use it. Discord is the same as. Let's see here. There we go. Welcome to Discord. So Discord is a collaborative tool that I've seen it used in combination with Zoom and so Zoom chat and Discord and others. So I was in I'll show you, this is Digital Karma. I was at a training, it was a UX, a user experience training. And so it was about a 4-hour training. We were on Zoom and we were on Digital Karma, and we were also running through demonstration and tutorials. So there was a lot going on, and we had a lot to juggle. But they used Zoom for displaying presentation slides and for some basic chatter, some just sort of global questions in the chat. And all of their demonstration was all through Zoom. But then they had this, Digital Karma set up this Discord page, which I believe is free. Amanda, are you finding that?
Like I said, I'm so brand new to it. I think it is, but
think
maybe others know. Yeah.
And like most of these web-based tools, they're free to a point usually, right? So that you can get a certain amount of features for free, and then if you want to have additional features and benefits, that's when the money comes in. Discord and Slack are both very well established. Discord is actually used by our gaming friends. And so for students, it can be very appealing because they're probably already familiar with this infrastructure and with this tool. They chose, so I've used Padlet for our intros. You can also set up these boards. Basically, you set up these new channels. So these are text channels. So this is where they asked if we had any questions about the boot camp that was going on, we were to post them here. People could share resources here and do that live, which I think now, as I think about this meeting, even this type of setting would be wonderful to have a Discord set up, because we could have done intros in Discord. Could have been a place for general questions, a place to share resources, any events that were coming up. There were about, I don't even know how many of us were in this. There were a lot. There were more than 100 of us attending this event, and we were from all over the world. So it was really fun to be able to share these different this information, and it stays. See, it's still here. So this is weeks later. There was some networking. So if we wanted to post our LinkedIn links there, and I connected with so many people on that. Jobs, there were job postings, and then there was also more on user research, which of course was the primary topic.
Great.
Does that give you an idea?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the demonstration. Appreciate it.
A little demo there.
Yep.
Wonderful tool. The main reason that I haven't used it excessively is because it feels like the one too many. If you've ever heard that phrasing. After a while, you know, you're already using Blackboard, you're already using email, you're already using something like Teams, you're already using, you know, maybe something like Padlet, and now you're using Zoom. At what point does it just become too much, especially for one person to manage? That digital karma that I showed you on Discord, there were 3 people helping the speaker, managing the Discord, managing the chat. And so of course that in that environment, that's going to work beautifully because you have people to help facilitate. You know, even here on Zoom, if I had to also moderate chat, it would be challenging, right? Because I'd have to break from this and then over to chat. And it would, you know, it can become almost a little staccato, a little uneven. So I think especially as faculty, we have to really think about it and balance what is going to make the most sense for either the community that we're meeting in or the students that we're managing and the classroom that we're managing.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. We do have a couple of questions that popped up related to this, so let's jump into those quickly. The last one here, would you use Discord while you are using Zoom instead of the chat feature? So maybe you can give us some instances when you would use that.
Yes, I don't see why not. The other thing that I love about Discord and Slack is that you can share files and links and all sorts of things in that chat environment, where Zoom basically limits you. You can share hyperlinks, but you can't. In a lot of cases, they won't even let you upload files. It depends on the privacy settings and the security settings of that Zoom that you're on. But I think I would, if I was going to be solo, I would use Zoom and Discord and not Zoom chat. I would not try to have both because it's too much. I'd limit it. Yeah.
And there was one other question, and Isabel, feel free to jump in if I missed anything here, but I did see a good question. Somebody asked about, you know, if an instructor is on their own, I think that's what they were implying, you know, how much do you use the chat? So you want to be respectful to the person that's both trying to teach and monitor the chat. Do you have any suggestions there as a participant? You know, how much should you be using the chat? If you're solo, was that? I think she was asking, and I don't, Isabel, feel free again to jump in, but I think, oh, here it is. Sometimes the chat can be distracting. What tips do you have for using the chat wisely without being disrespectful to the speaker? There's the question. Well, I love it when, if I'm in charge of a meeting, I love to be able to set, you know, expectations at the beginning and say, if you've got a question, throw it into the chat anytime. If that isn't happening, I think it's appropriate to use the chat as needed, as long as it's not, you know, unless you're just feeling like you're really going crazy with it. I think if you're in an active, interactive meeting, you should use the chat as freely as you need to. And then that presenter, if they didn't set those expectations at the beginning, they're going to reset really quickly, and they're going to say, okay, so I've got a lot of chats. Hold on, I'm going to get to those in a minute. They will reset themselves naturally. And so I don't think as a participant, you're being rude by posting into the chat. It's really the presenter's responsibility to set expectations or to reset if they're really starting to come in. They may have to pause and say, okay, I've got a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to address them all at the end, or I'm going to take a minute right now and address them. Great. And somebody also just made the point too that, you know, you don't need to necessarily send your chat to everyone. There is the ability with Zoom to send to individual participants and not have it flood. I think we were going to talk about that. I think that's in my etiquette. Okay. Yes, I want to make sure I say something about that. Okay, great. So we're a little bit on, okay, we're okay. We can make it up in our breakout session. So caring for others during online meetings. And I labeled this on purpose the way I did, because I think those individuals who are maybe non-native English speakers, introverts, people who have
nervous energy, a little bit of anxiety that hangs out with them. These are tough times with these virtual meetings. It's also really tough times for our gregarious friends who don't like to stop talking and who love the sound of their own voice. We need to help all of them in addressing and working through this era that we're in. Drawing out introverts, what I do with all of, especially my students, but also if I'm leading a meeting, I pay attention to who has not shared, especially if it's a small group. A large group like this, it's gonna, the introverts maybe love it because they can hide a little bit. But if you're in a group setting where there's an introvert that hasn't spoken, encouraging them, you may direct them, say, Susan, I haven't heard from you. Did you have any additional comments or did you have any thoughts? Normally, if they were addressed right away, that's if they have something to say, that's a nice prompt for them. Encourage use of chat for the introverts. It's a wonderful way for them to articulate without feeling on the spot. And actually the same goes for our non-native speakers of English as participants or as speakers, to really encourage the use of chat, to draw them out where it's appropriate. You don't want to draw attention to people if it doesn't feel organic and it doesn't feel right. You don't want to put somebody on the spot. But if you know that that person has an interesting insight, has a story to share, has research background in a subject matter, drawing them out, I think, can be appropriate. And if you're worried about drawing them out and putting them on the spot, ask them in advance if they are comfortable with you doing that, and therefore they will, be able to give you that feedback and maybe come a little bit more prepared. Assisting those who may not realize their audio visual issues. Sometimes people don't realize that their mute is not on. Gently, politely saying, Susan, your sound's on, just FYI. Or if they're having video issues and there's a lot of things going on in their background, it's not impolite to say, can you go ahead and turn that video off until your visual issues get calmed down? Or the other thing that happens a lot is with visual issues, sometimes a person, because of their bandwidth, their Wi-Fi bandwidth, video on really makes them shaky, really makes them sound like Minnie Mouse, or it just causes all sorts of problems. So instead of asking them to drop from the call, say, why don't you try turning off your video? It'll probably improve your bandwidth. And then they're still with you and they're on there with the audio. And then paying attention. This is one of my flaws. I have a little bit of a wiggle tail, as my mother used to say. I have a hard time focusing. I struggled in church. I'm easily distracted by shiny objects, that sort of thing. So paying attention is really, really important for me when I'm in meetings. I have to basically turn everything else off. I have to be focused. I can't multitask because somebody will have to repeat themselves because I'm not listening. And so that's something that I know as I've always been that way. And I just need to focus and turn everything off and be present. Other thoughts on this? I know there were some questions that came in our pre-work that had some specific questions about non-native speakers of English. Is there anyone, is that in the post at all in the chat? Isabel or Amanda?
No, I don't see anything for this slide. I know that you're going to cover about private chats, I think, in the upcoming slide. So
I am. So etiquette. Some of these things we've already covered, but let's talk a little bit about it. Making virtual meetings feel organic. I think that the most organic meetings, and it's getting better. It was much more rocky in the early days there in March. Starting with, let's chat. But have a little light chatter, when the meeting starts. How's everybody doing? Let people bring their dogs into frame. Let kiddos come in and wave. All of those things that really break down the barriers. I think it's not to say that we shouldn't be professional and we shouldn't have a level of formality, but I think we can recognize where people are in their space, take that extra minute and ask, how was your weekend? And just soften things a bit and not get right to business. everybody needs a chance to sort of set, reset, get into this virtual mode, let people, you know, just sort of be wherever they are. They can come with they've just got off a workout. Sometimes that's okay. I think as we get more comfortable with the teams we meet with regularly, that the organic feel is going to improve a lot. The careful and appropriate use of Zoom chat, what we're talking about there is that, like, this session is being recorded, and so are the chats. And so what I would just encourage everyone to be very mindful of is that if you're going to do private chats with a colleague during a meeting, note that you want to be careful to not use that as an opportunity to gossip or say anything quite catty, as it might be recorded and in perpetuity as part of the audio. And because Zoom, when there's a recording, it also records the chats. It also does closed captioning. It does all sorts of wonderful things. But if you don't want those chats to be seen by others outside the person that maybe you sent that private chat to, you might want to use texting instead. Other things, etiquette and interviews. So many of you might experience interviews, whether that's from the media or from, I don't know, job interviews, or from being interviewed for a paper, for any manner of reasons that you might be interviewed. There's a lot of the same rules. The device at eye level, I should share it. If you put it on the note, Isabel, I'll share it. There's a really, really funny a video out there of a guy who shows all of the different Zoom angles, and they're just quite hilarious, where people are up here and they're down here and they're walking and they're all these things. So eye level limits the amount of seasickness that's possible, but also is the most professional. Posture, I'm a sloucher, so I have to be very mindful of my posture, even if it means putting a pillow behind you. I'm trying to keep that posture upright and straight. Use of nonverbals, nodding and smiling when you're on screen to show that you're listening and that you're paying attention, and that because I know that it's so challenging, especially with the students who don't want to be on video, that you're getting no nonverbal, you're getting nothing back from them, and that's really, really challenging. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in this discussion on how we can get these students to maybe show themselves a little bit more to help with that nonverbal. Phones should be in silent mode, notifications off, we talked about that. And then having note-taking materials and everything on hand. So I have my pen at the ready, I have my Post-it note at the ready, my water, because if I start to lean down, you're gonna see that, or if I'm starting to lean over here, it starts to look really awkward very quickly and becomes very distracting. And so the best you can to just sort of have your space ready. I even have a sign up. I have 2 children at home. One of them's at work and the other one is wandering around somewhere. And I have a sign up that says Zoom meeting in session, please be quiet, so that when they come in and try to get ice out of the ice box, it's not so loud, that they don't come in and suddenly ask me questions. So putting up all these things to help with your space is really helpful. Do we have questions before breakout? Go ahead.
We had one final question here.
Yes.
What do you think of very exaggerated nodding? Should you set up expectations for not allowing that, or what are your thoughts?
I don't know if you can, I think some people are really exaggerated nodders. They just really got it going. I don't know if you can set expectations for that. I don't know, that's interesting how you would, if you have somebody that nods a lot. Other than trying to set, about maybe sharing online meeting etiquette, online meeting best practices, we can keep the nodding to a minimum. We don't have to go nuts. I don't know, that's an interesting question. I'd love to hear if somebody else has some ideas on that, on how to limit excessive nodding. I don't know, let's talk about it. That might be our segue here. We have a breakout session. So Amanda's gonna help, or Amanda and Isabel are gonna help me with this. We are gonna put everybody into breakout rooms. And if you haven't experienced this before, this is a feature in Zoom that's very handy. You can set up your breakout rooms in advance, or you can kind of do it right now, like at the ready. You give people a prompt, and somebody's going to copy paste, I think, that prompt into the
Correct. Yep.
into the chat.
Mhm.
Fact gathering. What are the greatest strengths and weaknesses in virtual meetings that you attend or lead? You can go off book on that. Sometimes in these breakout sessions, people are given roles. Depending on how long the session is, somebody might be asked to volunteer to be a note taker, or to be the speaker who comes back when we come back into the large group, to be the spokesperson for the group. We've chosen to keep this much more open and fluid. We're not going to assign roles to anyone. We really just want you to experience a breakout session and what it's like to come from this large group of people and popping into the small group, having a little chat, and then we'll come back as a large group. I think we're gonna limit it to about 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just going to check with you, Rebecca, to see what you were thinking.
Maybe 5 minutes. Do you
Yeah,
think,
because
or-
we're a little over because
A
we've
little
had
over.
such great questions, which is
Wonderful,
a
it's
good
wonderful.
thing, right?
Yeah, so break it, we'll go into a 5-session breakout, or 5-minute, excuse me, breakout session. And you're going to get a little notification that says something about join the session. Is that right? What do they get?
I'm just going to click open all rooms and we should move into them, and we'll have a little countdown for when we're at 1 minute. So,
Okay.
and again, the prompt is in the chat if you need it again. So
All
are
right,
we
go for
ready?
it and try it out.
All righty.
It's also fun for me. I'm always the one that's setting the breakout rooms, not the one that's in the breakout room. So it's actually really good to experience both sides of that.
I think in addition, and Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm newer to this, you know that, there's the countdown option, but I think there's also the ability to send a message, and maybe I could have done that to give more of a warning if people weren't watching the countdown. So
it was plenty of warning. We were just in the middle of a chatter, and so we just kept chatting.
That's a good
thing. We were chatting about was, and I don't know if Jessica, if it was you that brought it up, but in the earlier chat, but we are absolutely at a time where it is appropriate for us to be setting some expectations to our students, especially on what it means to be physically present in a virtual meeting. And that if they are, as Jessica was saying, making a smoothie, or as I've experienced, a student literally walking on a trail, or my husband experienced when a kiddo showed up shirtless in his bed, that we're definitely at a time that we can say the expectation when you show up to a virtual meeting is, where we're going to be synchronous and we're going to be together in real time. Here are some of the expectations that we have. And that's where you can state the things about whether or not they're showing video. You can say it's a preference. I believe we're not allowed to mandate it, but we can certainly say it's a preference, that they're going to be muted unless they are prompted for open discussion, and otherwise should be using chat or Discord if you bring in that tool. And that they're expected to not to be at a desk or to be on a bed or something, but they expect to be on screen and seen and ready to learn and ready to engage. And I'll work on some language for that. I think we have some, and I will share that with the group. Other thoughts that came out of your breakout sessions? I'd love to hear. We can open it up or chat. If you want to speak, feel free to speak. And Isabel, we've got a couple.
We have a chat message. Yes, we're allowed to say that they will turn on cameras. Universities has determined that this is not an invasion of privacy, but they have some language coming. But we also welcome whatever sample.
That's good to know. I was under the impression we were, at least at WSU, we were not allowed, but I'm interested in that, and I want to look into that because I think that changes a lot of things, of students really properly showing up to these virtual synchronous courses.
It does. We had a lot of questions about that in the spring because we had a student show up to a class at 10 a.m. drinking a beer. And the faculty member was reasonably upset that the student did this because it was so disrespectful to everyone else who had shown up. And in addition to that, there were some other moments like the shirtless, and we had a student attempt to attend class while actually driving. Like, I have my chat car up here and I'm
It's
driving.
terrible.
I mean, which is just frightening to me, like
Right.
every level of scary. And so University Legal has determined that faculty can require students to turn on their cameras. They do recognize that there are issues of equity that are involved. And so we are encouraging students to come to campus, because for exactly that reason. If they come to campus, we can help them with internet, as long as they don't have something totally offensive in their backgrounds.
They can also use virtual backgrounds, right? As if
and they can
they're,
use virtual. Yeah.
yeah. And I
So-
know, like Amanda said, that depending on their system, that could be problematic,
Mhm.
right? But
Right. But these are the things that SU has determined will fit for us.
I'm going to look more into it at WSU. I think that if they have not established that, they need to, the folks over in Academic Outreach and Innovation, which is our sort of our global arm, they need to talk about that. I think it's a really excellent point. Other things that came from your breakouts, how did we feel in that space? We have other chat, other messages, Isabel or Amanda?
Nothing at this time, and you're welcome to add to the chat or unmute yourself. Feel free to join the discussion. I have something that came up in our little group. Some faculty are quite concerned about how distracting chat can be, especially if you have a large number of students and the chat's just running while you're trying to give a lecture, and just trying to be able to follow that and then react to that and respond to that. We were talking, and again, we wanted to ask you, being able to disable the chat, is that an option? Can we, and the other question was, could we just turn the chat on for the last part of perhaps a lecture to take questions? Is there a way to do that?
Isabel, let's check if you'll put that on the notes.
Okay.
I will look at the settings for that without going out and Googling. I might, maybe in our break, I will Google that one.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Seems reasonable, but the other, if we are unable to sort of turn on, turn off chat, if that is not one of the capabilities, I believe you are able to, in the security setting, if I just take a peek right now, you can turn off their ability to chat. It's right there. So that might be, if you want to control the influx of chat, turn it on and turn it off at appropriate times. Perhaps, if we had a break and you want to, you're maybe taking a break, you say, okay, I'm going to turn the chat on, ask your questions, and then when we get back together, we'll get into it. Or the other thing is managing expectations. What I did was, throughout the last 6 weeks of class, I just told the students to post questions, and then at natural breaks or at the end, I would look at them and we'll get through them all. So I think it's either communicating and managing those expectations or using the features in Zoom to turn chat on and off for your participants.
Sharon also chimed in that it might be a good use to use a TA to monitor chats, perhaps, during
I'd love
class.
to have a TA to monitor my chats. I've actually considered seeing if I had a student who even wanted to do independent study, to come in and just be in my class space during my time to help me moderate chat, especially my larger classes. I think, yeah, if you have a TA, absolutely. My husband had 2 TAs last semester, and he used them in part to run breakout sessions, which I thought was very effective as well. So, very good. Is there any more? Did we miss anything else?
The last thing is, do you have any information about the requirements for doing the virtual backgrounds? It might just be the camera quality. I don't know if you know whether it's an operating system thing, an upgrade, like an update, or?
I don't know. Amanda, do you know what the problem is on yours?
I don't. Both my laptop and the external camera that SU has given me, I can't get it to work, and I've tried every background in my house. I've been in every room in my house, and I still can't. I'm just still like a ghost, in that background. So I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Let's put it on the list. I'll try
Okay.
to investigate it further. And I know there's certain dimensions that are recommended if you're talking about the background itself, so it doesn't come through pixelated or, you know, poor quality. But getting it to work, that is not a troubleshoot that I've had, so I'll have to follow up.
Okay, great.
So we're at break, right?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
We are at break. So why don't we do that? What do we want to come back at? Well, I have it set for 10 minutes.
Yep.
We're a little bit over, but yeah.
So we're gonna break for 10 minutes, and the timer is going to be on screen. So we'll be back. Okay, are there any questions before we move on to our final section? Otherwise, I can't see this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to keep going. So our final section is on virtual panels and poster presentations, managing Zoom, virtual panels, virtual posters, and whether you're a panelist, you're running the panel, you're serving as a moderator, you're a participant, all of the above. Many of us are facing this now. So managing Zoom, some of these things we've already talked about, but let's go ahead and review a few things. Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi is unstable, like we discussed earlier, and it's better to be on the phone, especially as a participant, then that's what you want to do. You want the stability and the consistency is much more important than all the rest. So definitely Wi-Fi and having a stable Wi-Fi as much as possible, or excuse me, a stable 5G. Running a test on those audio and video settings is important. Sorry, a little thing in my throat. Meeting and managing expectations. So just like we did at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about, we're gonna record this. Are you gonna have a password? That's something that your university might set as a standard. I know our university has set it as a default now that all Zoom meetings will have passwords. You have to turn off that setting to not have a password. Will it be recorded? Do you want permission to capture images? These are all important things. There's a lot of reason that people do not want to be seen or heard. And it's important that we, as meeting attendees, as meeting organizers, that we let people know what's happening. So we disclosed that there would be recording. We didn't say anything about capturing images, but I've seen a few articles out now where if I were to snap a picture right now of everybody on screen, I'm technically being a bit unethical to then post that on Twitter, because if we did not previously ask permission. Now, I think Amanda, we talked about this yesterday. You noted something about photos, didn't you? You're muted. Did you?
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I just said at the beginning about just the recording.
The recording.
I wasn't planning to capture any images, but you know, as you said, anybody could do that, and talking about if that's ethical or not, and that
Right.
kind of a thing. So
and if they don't disclose these things, it's just encouraged that you change your own settings, if allowed. Under security, the button that's security, if the participants are allowed to, meaning that the settings are set up, you should be able to rename yourself, and you can also always take yourself off screen if excuse me, if you do not want to be seen, if you just to turn off your video. But these are things about managing those expectations, using the Zoom features during a meeting like we've been doing. We've been using chat, we've been using the breakout rooms. There's also Annotate, which I have not used much, but screen sharing, allowing somebody else to control your screen. This works really well when I'm working with students or with faculty who are asking me to walk them through perhaps setting up Blackboard or troubleshooting something on maybe their online portfolio. I will often ask for control of the screen so then I can actually go in and drive, basically. It's a wonderful feature. It works very well, and it can be very handy when you're trying to, especially when you're trying to teach somebody how to do something. There's also the use of, I can't see it on my side because of the permission I'm at right now, but the reactions. So although Zoom is quite limited, I'm surprised they're not very evolved in this way. They only have the clap and the thumbs up. They don't have a thumbs down. Some other things that would be nice, but those features are also available to be able to be used. Preparation for how others will appear. That's just being mindful that some people might show up as the black box, and that can be very daunting, or they might show up with the video or lots of distractions in the background. And it goes back again to the managing expectations and what we've already discussed. With meetings that you're attending, you may not have a lot of control over that, but if you're organizing the meeting, organizing the panel, setting those expectations up front of that you'd love to see everybody, you'd love to see their shiny faces, that we're all here together. You'd like to have people unmute unless they're prompted, use of chat. Otherwise, just really trying to set it up that what you'd like to see. The black box is tough. I think with what we're talking about on setting what it means to be virtual synchronous standards for students will really help change some of that behavior. Zoom bombing was a very hot thing in March and April. I experienced a meeting. I was on a panel for the Association of Journalism, or Educators in Journalism and Mass Communication, and we got Zoom bombed right early on. It was right when this all started, and that was because they shared a public link. It was learned very quickly that that's not okay. So if Zoom bombing does happen, the best thing to do, of course, is to remove that person, apologize as quickly as possible, and remove the person as fast as you can. Also, the preventative measure is to do what we did today, which is to send out the Zoom link right before the meeting and include a password. And that's the greatest way to prevent those Zoom bombers from coming in. And then having a plan B if things go awry. So even before this meeting, we all, Amanda and Isabel and I, made sure that we had, there is a Zoom app that you can download on your phone, and to have that at the ready. So if I got dropped from here, I can go and grab my little headset extension. I can pop that right in. I can get my right back on the call, and I'm back online. So especially if you're presenting, having that plan B. I was in a session a week or so ago. This poor gentleman, he's an expert in HyFlex, and it was this national 30-minute session, and he just was having trouble after trouble. His Wi-Fi was problematic. His video was going in and out. And he eventually had to drop. He called back in about 10 minutes later, but it was just a bit of a debacle that I think could have been prevented had he kind of had his plan B at the ready, and he was able to pop on that phone right away and get back on the call. It worked out, it's fine, people are forgiving, but it just, if you know how to do it and you got it set up, you'll just be more successful. Any comments or chats before I go forward? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Virtual panels. So I've served on a lot of virtual panels. I've also been a participant or just a viewer of virtual panels. I was in one last week. I'm in one this week. They are becoming more and more common. And so with virtual panels, whether you're attending or you are participating or you're actually leading a virtual panel, some of the most important things is to understand who's in the audience and how many other panelists are there going to be. It can be very challenging if you're one of 13 panelists versus one of 4 panelists. Understanding your role on the panel is very critical to just know, am I going to be providing maybe a 3-minute overview? Am I showing things on screen? I attended a panel just last week where they didn't give us a lot of information. And when I got there, they they said, well, this is what we want you to talk about, and can you show this example and that example? And I thought, oh my goodness, it's a fine time to be finding out all of this. So we did pull it together, and I did happen to have some things I was able to show very quickly. And I take some responsibility for that. I probably should have asked some more questions instead of just sort of showing up. So understanding the role on the panel is a really, really good idea. Coming prepared with talking points is also very helpful to even just have some things jotted down on and printed out in front of you, just so you're not winging it and you're ready to present. Mastering the transitions, which is really connecting back to the previous panelists, acknowledging what they said and adding to it, or acknowledging what another previous panelist said, and sharing an additional resource or an additional example really makes it feel more of a tied together, cohesive presentation. Speaking directly to the other panelists. If I'm ever serving on a panel, I am sure to have all of their names. I've looked them up, on LinkedIn perhaps, or their bios, just to make sure I kind of know who I'm speaking with and what their primary background is, and just really giving that added value of expertise and attention and respect, honestly, to your fellow panelists. Speaking directly to the audience and meeting them where they're at. And it is important to understand the audience, like I said at the beginning, only because if you're speaking to college students, you're speaking to faculty, you're speaking to the community members, it might change your tone, it might change some of the language use, it might change the examples you use. That's why it's just really important to know that. And then being concise, and that's why the talking points are very helpful. Otherwise, you might have a tendency to run on a little longer and have to be cut off by your moderator. So being concise, being prepared. Any thoughts, questions regarding virtual panels from the group? Feel free to type in the chat if you've got something as we're talking about these things. Virtual poster presentations. So for any graduate students, postdocs that are in the session, I have to do poster sessions as well, where we're starting to do, I even have poster sessions as a requirement of my students. It's becoming something that is happening outside of just research channels. I also do posters for my research work, but the greatest challenge is to now have to show these posters that are so wonderful in a physical space, when you can have people walking through the convention hall, and you're able to talk with people for 5, even 10 minutes. The virtual poster presentations are drastically changing how these are going to work. And even though the artwork might be the same, you may still be designing your 2 feet by 3 feet poster. You may now have to adjust on what you're going to show. And so you have the visual, you have your full 2 feet by 3 feet, maybe it's a PDF. But when it comes to actually showcasing that during a live session, I have a panel that I'm on in August where I'm going to have to showcase a poster, and I have to have a handout. I have an option to actually walk people through the poster through audio and video. It's also recommended to actually take your poster and break it up into quadrants that would be slides, so that you can almost translate that poster into what would now be a slide deck. So it's a more digestible and easier to view, look at your poster itself. Summarizing the data, back to the talking points, very helpful. And also embracing exposure, which means that you have this opportunity now with virtual posters to share that. Maybe you want to share them publicly or not, but certainly that you now have a way to share them through social media, to write about your research in a new way, sharing those posters, sharing the findings, and allowing that maybe the conference organizer is also going to be putting out these posters in a more public format. Everything depends on the conference, if they're going to be public or if they're going to be hidden behind password protection. But if there's an opportunity to gain further exposure beyond the individuals that are going to attend the conference, you can also embrace exposure through the use of your artwork for your poster as well. I think I've covered that. Any questions on this section? Not as many questions here. All right. Well, we did great. We have 7 minutes. I'm impressed. It's not always easy to get us down to the time. So final words and comments.
Darren has a comment here. Do you know if there's any intellectual property issues with posters if they are shared publicly on social media or by organizers?
I think the organizer will have to disclose if they're going to share anything publicly. I think a lot of the posters, there's enough sensitive information that many of them will be password protected, but you might still be able to share findings, even if you don't share the poster itself. You can share highlights or share certain aspects of artwork, but it really will depend on some of the policies around the grant, the granting organization, as well as the conference. So I'm not sure that's something that, as independently we can decide.
Rebecca, I just had a question. I was thinking back as to how this topic really evolved for us here at WISE and coming to contact you and all of that, and thinking about our title here, Let Your Voice Be Heard. And I think this kind of started out of thinking about having to connect online with faculty or advisors or supervisors and thinking about some of those, hierarchical or power kind of dynamics, and how to really make sure your voice is being heard in those types of settings, whether it's a meeting or one-on-one. So I didn't know if you want to just kind of conclude with some thoughts around that, since
Sure.
I think that's how we started here in thinking about this particular topic.
And thoughts on how to be heard, how to be seen, and how to also not be dismissed, I think are all very, very, very critical in the virtual setting. And so much of it comes down to a lot of the principles we've already discussed. The preparation and being prepared in advance is so important. Setting yourself up for as success as much as you can in the way that you appear, the way that your space is set up, the way you articulate yourself, and the voice and your strength and your ability to be concise is very critical as well. I think the use of raising your hand, a point of order, is also really critical. Not if someone tries to sort of be a bully in these settings and not allow people to speak. As much as you can to try to interject where there's appropriate pauses, to follow up with questions that are not answered, to provide pre-questions, questions prior to a session. These are things I'd like to know more about, or these are questions that I have. All of these things that show a level of polite assertiveness, I think make a huge difference in this space. And there will always be people who are just overbearing and not very helpful, but preparation, both pre and certainly post, if there are things that were not answered, that were not addressed, being assertive, showing up with your strong voice, your appearance, your space. All of these things will make a very big difference in being heard and being seen.
Thank you.
Are there other comments? Really appreciate the interaction today. It's so much more fun to be in these sessions when people speak. Oftentimes, that doesn't happen, and you end up sort of talking to yourself for the entire meeting, right? So this has been a really wonderful engagement.
Great. We have a great comment here. If you're in a meeting and you notice that someone isn't getting the opportunity to talk, you can be an ally. Yes. And you can call it out. Just like in a face-to-face meeting. Yep. Yeah, thank you for that comment.
Taking care of others, the self-care and the taking care of others. Especially the other thing, I think a good point with that, if you have something that you need to pass, you really need to get across in a meeting, maybe share that information with a trusted colleague and say, I really need to get this across. If I'm not able to get in there, if you could be my advocate, and say, say, Isabel, I heard that you and I were talking the other day, and you were bringing up some really good points about X, and give them, like, open a door for them if it's just not happening, especially if it's a junior person who's struggling to be heard.
Great.
Yeah, online advocacy, that's wonderful.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca, so much. This has been
Yes.
wonderful. And I just, again, I'll say the same. I really appreciate the engagement today. It makes it so much more valuable, I think, for all of us to have such good discussions, such good questions. So thank you so much. Just a reminder, I'm going to send that eval very shortly. It's quick and easy, and we so appreciate your feedback. Also, I'm going to get you the recording, the slides, notes. We have a number of follow-up items. Rebecca's so
And I'll get those
kindly
too.
offered to put those together for us as well. So we will get those to you as soon as we can. So thank you. Yep.
Final screen here. There we go.
Oh,
We've got,
yes.
I forgot about that little screen we have here for contacting me, connecting with me. And I think, Amanda, you're going to share this in the follow-up materials as well. Connecting with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on Twitter as well. Certainly my email if you wanted to ask any specific follow-up questions on anything that wasn't really addressed. Happy to do that as well.
Absolutely. And I'm going to, of course, give a shout out to our social media accounts at the SUYs. If you're not connecting with us, please do so. Isabel manages those accounts and she does a fantastic job. So please connect with us. And my goodness, it's 4 o'clock. We did it.
We did it. That's impressive. It's always impressive
On the
when something ends on time.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you, Isabel.
course.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.